Hello, music makers. Welcome back. With the recent passing of the legendary Quincy Jones, rest in peace, good sir, him being widely regarded as one of the best producers of all time has meant that the word producer is on many people's lips again. Now, I have already made a video called You Are Not a Producer, and it did feature some quotes from Quincy. In that video, I argued that misunderstanding that term could be the barrier between you and success in music. However, in a beautiful twist of irony, that video's sound was all messed up. So, it's been a year, there's lots more to talk about. If you'll permit me, I'd like another go at explaining what music production really is. Let's go. First of all, let me explain this is not an argument over definitions. I'm fully aware language evolves over time, and while I am getting on a bit, this isn't some old man shouts at clouds, you're using my words wrong kind of thing. It's because as the language has changed around music production and the roles have also homogenized, an entire step in the music creation process has been lost. Let me explain. Music production is now just an umbrella term for everything we do when we make tracks. But the term used to mean something else. It used to be its own role, just as mix engineer or mastering engineer or songwriter used to be its own role. Now, the thing is, yes, most of us work alone now, and yes, we do all those things ourselves, but we still use and understand those terms. Writing, arranging, mixing, and they still mean the same thing they did decades ago. But through the era of bedroom producers and beat makers, as music producer moved to be an umbrella term, its original role was never replaced with anything. So now, through this language happenstance, not only do we have artists that misunderstand production, they are trying to make music missing an entire process that they weren't even aware existed. So this one's going to sound like the start of a joke, but it's actually a true story. 3 blokes go into a recording studio. They're called Fred, Sonny, and Kieran. After discussing an initial idea, Sonny and Fred make Kieran leave the room, probably because there's too many cooks in the kitchen, as the saying goes. Sonny and Fred get on with writing a track, making sounds for the track, and mixing it. However, in that process, they've kind of got lost in the weeds a bit. They've lost direction, and they're starting to question some choices. So they get Kieran to come back in the room, and he helps them finish the idea off. If you hadn't realised by now, Sonny, Fred and Kieran are Skrillex, Fred Again and Fortet, and this happened during their collaboration last year, making Baby Again. So, who was the producer in that scenario? Was it the 2 extremely accomplished musicians that are Fred and Sonny, with their great knowledge of music theory, being able to play multiple instruments and craft incredible sounds? Or was it the other guy, who did none of that? Sorry, Kieran, it sounds like I've done you dirty there, but no, the correct answer is Fortet was the producer there. In his interview on the Tape Notes podcast, Kieran declared that he would watch Sonny make sounds and mix sounds so fast that he didn't actually know how he was achieving them, and that Fred would be so obsessed with the songwriting side of things, saying instead that what he preferred to do was sculpt the journey and overall idea before those 2 got stuck picking kick drums, etc. Scenario number 2. Let's say you've been making tracks for many years, and through one way or another, you meet a brilliant musician. Let's call him Rod. Rod has this amazing talent whereby any rough idea that you can hum to him, he will instantly play back on the first try, saving you all that time moving MIDI up and down, trying to get the synth to play the notes that were in your head. So, great, Rod brings all your ideas to life, but there's still another problem. Although your ideas are good and catchy, the track isn't sounding great, something you've always struggled with. But luckily, you know of a guy called Bruce, who can make tracks sound as good as anything out there. So now you've got a great track that sounds great too. But now you're wondering, is it your track? Yes, all the ideas were yours, but you haven't done any of the actual music on this one, or any of the actual sound. You just told them what you wanted, and they brought your vision to life. Sure, you could do that yourself before now, but it never came together so quick. And because it was quicker than doing it yourself, the results are far closer to your initial vision than you have ever managed to achieve. Now, this is a parable, glossing over a lot of the details. But if you were called Quincy in this scenario, Rod is Rod Temperton, and Bruce is Bruce Swedian. The track is Thriller. That makes you the producer. Now, since the technology has made it possible for us to do everything ourselves, and for the last decade, the superstar DJ has replaced the traditional pop star, somewhere between that technology, mixed up language, and the vanity of the industry, there's a tremendous stigma attached to hiring talent to make music, whilst ironically at the same time being called a music producer. DJs who, quote-unquote, don't make their own music aren't seen as real music producers. But as I discussed in the previous video, DJs make excellent producers in the original sense of the role. As a musician and sometimes ghostwriter myself, I can attest the results are always far better when a producer is there to guide the art. If you've spent hours or days on a section of your track, finally getting it to work, the last thing on your mind would be the bigger picture of whether that section deserves to be there in the first place. You need that person that wasn't in the room, that didn't spend all those days that you did and doesn't know what effort was put into that section. You need that person to walk in the room at the end and say, why is that there? That doesn't benefit the track. I'm still sticking to that same film director analogy I used in the last video. Expecting the producer to be the one who makes the music and mix the track is like expecting the film director to star in the film and write the scripts. That is not their job. Now, I know what you're typing already. You're just one person. You have no budget. You're not going to be hiring anyone, certainly not anytime soon. Maybe an AI mastering service at best. What am I supposed to do with this information? And I get it. I hear you. I struggle with this every day myself. But now at least we understand that production is not writing, it's not mixing. And when we are making our own music, we can recognize when we are wearing the writer's hat or the engineer's hat. And because we are aware of this, we can consciously take a moment, step back, put on the producer's hat, and ask ourselves, is any of this contributing to the final vision? In fact, having an awareness of the final vision at all is a producer-like mindset we should be practicing, and is a big advantage compared to most beginners. Most beginners suffer from a lack of production largely in this area. We often start just because we want to make a cool noise. There's no plan, there's no direction, there's no consideration to who it's for or where it should be played. And yes, you can argue that that is true art. A true artist doesn't have to worry about those things. But a producer's job is to take that art and guide it towards a destination that they know it will fit. And the unfortunate news for many artists is it's that last stage, the bit the producer does, which enables it to translate to the real-world audience and ultimately becomes a large part of the reason the track spreads, which is what takes their art from hobby to career. So if you are on your own today, you still have to factor in this process. Yes, being a self-produced solo artist, music maker, whatever you want to call yourself, is going to be harder and slower. You might need to spend 2 weeks away from a track just to have some fresh ears next time you listen. But now at least you have some awareness. The next time you recognize the vocal would benefit from being a bit breathier, because the lyrics are rather intimate and so is the performance. In that moment, you're wearing your producer's hat. The fact that you then reach for an EQ and maybe choose a Pultec style EQ in order to get that breathiness, whatever tool you use to bring about that solution, that's you wearing the engineering hat. But now you can take advantage of the fact that the producer in you has recognized that intimate mood from the vocal is something you like. So have that play into the rest of the track. Your sound design of your synths, drum sound selection, tempo, overall energy levels, etc. just working towards a cohesive mood at least. This is a basic form of production, which might save you from cycling 1,000 presets or plugins because you have no direction. I talked about this at length in this video. In a survey of electronic musicians asking what they struggled with the most, the top answers were finishing tracks and starting tracks, and you can begin to see why this might be the case.
What's happened?
They haven't EQ'd that snare properly.
Oh, for God's sake, not this again.
It's just awful level of production.
Well, it can't be that bad if their song's being played on the radio and yours isn't.
Now, this was a great skit by the channel J Matin, and while I did acknowledge in my comment that I was aware this is a joke, my comment still rubbed many people up the wrong way, and I did have a lot of fun quoting Rick Rubin in response.
Do you play instruments?
Barely.
Do you know how to work a soundboard?
No. I have no technical ability, and I know nothing about music.
But it did also remind me of Declan's comment on the last video, mentioning his girlfriend would always be the one to comment on things he hadn't noticed, saying she was the real producer, he was just a knob twiddler. Between Jay, Declan and Rick Rubin though, it's a good tip. If you can get any second pair of ears on your track, as long as you can make them aware of what you think the track's destination should be, that second pair of ears doesn't necessarily have to be someone talented from the music industry to be of benefit, even if they can't offer anything. The experience of finishing something and then showing it to someone might get you into the mindset of looking at it from the outside for the first time in a while. The rant is almost over. I just wanted to let you know I will be re-uploading the first video with a much better sound balance so you can actually hear what I'm talking about. That should pop up next. If not, link in the description. As always, I hope this helped some of you. If it did, you know what to do. Press a button or two for me. And until next week, I'll see you in the comments. Bye-bye.